Bruh, look at this dude. Wait till you see the. No, 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 no. Look at the top of his head.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the is that? What is that?
David Production.
They forgot to color in Ermi's top face triangle. Pfft, unwatchable. 0 out of 10. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 6 Stone Ocean has finally received its long-awaited anime adaptation, and I wanted to give my general thoughts, feedback, and concerns. This video specifically will cover why I believe Netflix rushed the release of Stone Ocean and the repercussions it had specifically on the production. I will mostly leave out discussion of the community side of things because I've already addressed those in a previous video, and will revisit them in a few months before the next batch of Stone Ocean drops. Despite Netflix and Warner Bros. Dishing out copyright claims and strikes on all of my previous Stone Ocean videos, I've won every single one of them, usually at the cost of my ad revenue, but I don't care because I'm making these videos because I like to talk about it. But before we get into that, you see this number? That's a big number. 250,000 subscribers, which is insane, and I can't thank you guys enough. Right now, I'm feeling the Christmas spirit, and I'll be giving away this stone-free super action statue to one of you lucky viewers. Funny story, I actually got this because the first one was misdelivered, so I bought a new one, and I actually got the old one a couple months later. So that was weird. I haven't opened it, I haven't touched it, and I sort of wanted to hang on to it just to do something fun like this for the release of Stone Ocean, and I'm feeling a little generous. All you need to do to enter is be subscribed to the channel and leave a comment answering the following question. What is the best stand in Stone Ocean and why? I'll be announcing the winner on the community tab before Christmas. As expected, the anime followed the 6th member of the Joestar clan, Jolyne Kujo, and her framed murder and subsequent imprisonment. The episodes cover the first third of the part, that being episode 1 covering Jolyne getting sentenced, episode 2 is about the Goo Goo Dolls fight against Quest, episodes 3 through 5 are about Jotaro attempting to break Jolyne out, but losing his memory and stand in the process, episode 6 is about Hermes unlocking her stand Kiss to fight Lightning McQueen, episodes 7 and 8 are the Foo Fighters arc, episodes 9 through 11 are the Lang Wrangler fight, and episode 12 is the finale in the courtyard with Savage Garden and Weather Report's flash flood warning. Big rip for Anasui fans out there because he only got one scene and he doesn't have any lines. Let's start with the positives because there's a ton of them in this anime. Firstly, I think the easiest dub for the Stone Ocean anime is the voice cast. The voice actors and actresses do an amazing job all around, with one exception that I want to talk about separately later. I think we pretty much knew this going in with Aifaru's literally being a JoJo character and always wanting this role, and this isn't even exclusive to the Japanese cast. Kira Buckland nails the role of Jolyne as well, something she put a lot of hard work and effort towards. She had a really inspiring thread about that on Twitter, so I have that linked in the description below. The voice actors and actresses are literally Odin in the pot for this entire production. They make it worth watching even if you aren't the biggest fan of Part 6. The characters pop off so much more than before, and I don't blame them for being mostly stoic in the manga because, well, they are in prison, but compared to a character like Gyro who more naturally pops off of the manga pages, it's nice to see these characters given more emotion than I think was originally portrayed. If I had to pick a favorite, it would honestly be Hermes because it was such an unexpectedly hilarious and good performance, and either Poochie or Jolyne would be a close second. But little things like Wes singing Dolly Parton's Jolyne,
Jolyne, Jolyne, Jolyne, Jolyne,
or Foo Fighters being even more adorable than before, are so precious, and they can only come from an anime adaptation like this. Another great choice was to redesign some of the characters from Part 6 to make them look a little less hideous. Now, I don't know what it is about Araki. Maybe he thinks us Americans are all ugly, and while I don't disagree, not all of us are blessed with eternal youth like he is. That's to say, characters like the lawyer, Loco Barocco, and McQueen all had facelifts, making them look like actual members of the human species and not One Piece rejects. Here's hoping David Pro has the balls to make Ungalo beautiful, but I'm not holding my breath. I thought the animation had excellent use of sound effects, and the color swaps were very fitting for the scenes they were used in. Pretty much all the fights were choreographed well for the transition from anime to manga. Most of the things just felt like they were in the right place for what Stone Ocean is. We're given more information about the other inmates like McQueen or Lang Wrangler, and I always love to see that stuff from the anime. David Pro truly made La Squadra so much more detailed than before when they adapted Golden Wind, and I really appreciate it. It gives the audience a reason to care about the villains that the characters are up against. And for the most part, I think they improved some of the pacing issues associated with the structure of the part. Even if I don't really like the batch drops, this is a proper third of Stone Ocean. However, the anime really can't fix the slow start of Stone Ocean, which I particularly liked in the manga because the characters were far more consistent than they were later in the part. But when you are watching a batch release, it is very exhausting. This might ruffle a few jimmies, but I really think the poorer qualities of this adaptation come from the fact Netflix wanted to push it out 1 month earlier than the TV broadcasting release date. I think this negatively affected the product we received, and I'm going to try and explain why with these following points. Missing plot points, misuse of assets, bad CGI. This is not a critique of David Productions as a studio because I know they're trying their absolute best to do this, but I think post-pandemic shutdowns and a rushed release schedule make it fairly obvious something isn't particularly setting right with this adaptation. Stone Ocean as a part is something I've been more critical of than most because that primarily comes from the issues with its pacing. I physically felt tired by episode 7, binging them all on December 1st. It was a Wednesday, I had class, I had to write my thesis, and instead, I was watching JoJo's. Normally, not a bad thing, but I just don't understand how people can actually binge like that and enjoy every aspect of the material they're watching. I thought maybe I'm just too old for it now, maybe I've grown out of that phase of my life, and then I realized I watched all of the One Piece anime for the second time in 2020 alone. So no, that's not it. And I hate to be the person to do it, but if you go back to part 5 and watch the first 5 episodes of that, it's like night and day when it comes to pacing, structure, and animation. Some of these things David Pro can't control. Like I said, obviously the jarring pacing from the original manga. But when Ham on Beat literally makes a 20-minute video pointing out all the differences between the manga and anime, many of these things sort of boil down to not only bad pacing, but missing plot points that are just ignored. Link to that video in the description. And I really think they were trying their best to make it more palatable to a general audience. However, there are some decisions I just can't get behind, and I think while they don't harm the viewing experience, they actively show that things were rushed. If you wind the clocks back to the boondoggle that was the Joestar Inherited Soul event, recall that there was no footage or anything in April. The very first trailer only came out 4 months ago, and primarily showed footage from the first 5 episodes. They even had Anisui's assets pasted over that scene where the prison guard talks to John Gallier. So that's weird leading up to it, but then when you're watching the episodes you realize, why do these episodes need recaps? Especially since there's a ton of content from the original manga missing in this adaptation, and the fact that it's on Netflix. The business model is just you watch episode, then you watch next episode. That seems like an odd choice right out of the gate. And then you notice things like the overuse of CGI backgrounds in place of traditional hand-drawn ones, and weird assets like CGI pianos and other things. Those easily could have been drawn by a dedicated background artist team. However, if there were any budgetary cuts that were made to survive the pandemic, it's not unreasonable to assume that backgrounds would be first on the chopping block. And this makes sense from a financial perspective because you could just generate all that stuff in a computer quicker and cheaper, but the product we receive does look cheaper as a result. I don't know, it's weird. It has this uncanny valley effect where the characters don't look like they're inhabiting the same space as what's around them. Bringing it back to Golden Wind's first few episodes, you have the beautiful city of Naples and all of its inhabitants hand-drawn and 2D animated, with CG limited to the vehicles and the stand user's aura. We'll get into the CGI as a whole in a little bit, but I think it's important to mention it here because that was something that was very surprising to me. And my suspicion of a rushed release schedule only grew further because of the overuse of Jolyne's theme. Now ask yourself, in how many episodes did Jolyne's theme play during Stone Ocean? The answer is 9, only not being played in episodes 3, 5, and 10. I really don't understand this at all. Jolyne's theme is good, don't get me wrong, but it's not my favorite. It feels like it tried to do what Giorno's theme did, but not as well or differently in its own sort of style.
気づかないふりをするんだ。
いきなり何を言い出すのかはっきり言うわ。あんた何か気に入らないわ。これで私は当分懲罰貿易だ。
But what made Giorno's and Josuke's and Jotaro's themes special is that they were exclusively reserved for climactic moments in the series, not for, well, crocodile poop. I literally busted a gut when Jolyne's theme was played to save Aramis from crocodile poop. What?
ワニのうんこの上。
For any anime adaptation, your OST should be the icing on the cake. It tastes great when you combine it with a good cake. The cake being the meat of what you're adapting, the moments, the story, the animation. But the problem is when that cake is 90% icing and you eat that cake every single day, it just becomes less enjoyable. That's what Jolyne's theme is to this anime. And it doesn't have much competition when it comes to memorable tracks from Stone Ocean. The music feels like a mix of both phenomenal tracks and then tracks that were done by the local high school band. And at that point, I realized just one extra month of development time would have significantly helped things here, because then you might not have to use Jolyne's theme during every single big moment. And I honestly think Weather Report's theme is better because it wasn't overused like Jolyne's theme. And Giorno's theme wasn't overused in the anime, which is why it became a meme in the first place. People associate that climactic music with some of the most epic and mundane things to make one of the best JoJo memes out there. But enough meme theory for this video. Next would be the misappropriation of silhouettes in place of characters. I know some people really love this decision because it makes the adaptation look more like a manga, and I do too in certain circumstances. But unfortunately, they're not being used with the same effect that the original manga did. For example, when Jolyne is on the phone, all the surrounding characters are silhouetted except for this other female prisoner. This is used to place the audience's focus on Jolyne, similar to that in the manga. But in the manga, if you look at this exact panel, these silhouettes were only used for characters out of the frame of reference. They weren't in the foreground like they are in the anime. And this choice to me comes off as a cost-cutting measure at best, and a lazy decision masquerading as the same stylized choice at worst. Like, they literally nailed this choice so perfectly with Narancia versus Talking Head and Clash, because the entire crowd wasn't silhouetted during the full fight. They only became silhouettes during the climax, which really didn't matter because we were focusing on Narancia's tongue for most of it. And this choice was actually done really well for There's 6 of Us, because that built up to the reveal of the Foo Fighters imposter Among Us. Unfortunately, it just adds to the feeling that Part 6 was rushed out the gate, so much so that they didn't have the proper animators working on the backgrounds or background characters. They clearly didn't have enough time, and maybe they were understaffed on top of it. Now, I have a rule of thumb when it comes to CGI in anime. The worst omen for any CGI would be seeing a CGI flag. If you see one of these things, be afraid. Be very afraid. The CGI is kind of terrible. For the most part. No, I'm not talking about the opening from Kamikaze Doga, whose entire job it is to make high-quality CG anime. I'm talking about what's in the show itself, which Kamikaze Doga did not do. And it's not that whole thing where, oh, the CG is actually good, they just didn't mix the frames well. I agree, they didn't mix the frames well. You have these higher FPS CGI models going against the 12 FPS anime, but even when you freeze frames, the models are just low res. Now, it's understandable for things like Jolyne's string to be CGI, since they're small and they don't require super much detail to them, and it would be a pain to animate, and you could use them to do things that are really cool. But riddle me this, David. Did you have to reuse the White Snake assets from Eyes of Heaven? Lang Wrangler literally got what he deserved. But that doesn't mean I want to look at a floating brown turd for 3 episodes. And this really isn't surprising because the director of CG for this season of JoJo's was the same guy who directed the bear from Golden Kamui into My Nightmares. He should be directing dump trucks to the landfills, because I totally see it leaving a stain on the production. The money from Marilyn Manson was marginally better than blue screen money that YouTubers use. Though I have to say, it was enjoyable to see my old friends like Lincoln and Hamilton and Jackson and Benjamin and Grant, oh, he's easily my favorite, all in their flat CG glory. When Jolyne realized she was in Whitesnake's illusion, it felt like the CG director told the staff, just open up Blender and make all the things cool. Like seriously, what is this? There's literally no other way to do this scene without assaulting my eyes with this trash tier CG. But it's so weird because the CGI isn't all bad. One of the best ones that stood out was for the stand Manhattan Transfer. I know it doesn't look much better than Aerosmith did from Golden Wind, but it stands out for a different reason. Manhattan Transfer in the anime adaptation is significantly more visually interesting than it is in the manga, and that's primarily because you can actually see how the air currents affect the stand. All of it. Now, when I read the manga, I just imagined it like a blue clef key, some metal top having keys jingle in the wind below, and that's how John Gallier could see the location of his target. And I guess I really only thought that because I assumed it had a hard surface when it materialized, since Jean Gallier would ricochet bullets off of it. But what the anime does, and I think very brilliantly, is give it the properties of a plastic bag blowing in the wind. And this is so cool and interesting because it really shows what adaptation should strive to do. Because out of the multiple times I've read part 6, if this was the original intention for how the stand worked, I never saw it. Now, the final thing I want to mention is what I brought up before. There was an exception to all the great performances from the voice actors and actresses that I should address now. Brittany Lauda as Foo Fighters in the English dub is not a good choice at all. You took the one character the anime made even more adorable than before and gave her an often monotone performance with such poor delivery, so much so that it actively took me out of the show. And this type of performance from her isn't exclusive to JoJo. Look at Doctor from Akudama Drive for another recent example. And admittedly, I am a little biased against her. It was just over a year ago she took to Twitter to lambaste Riverdue covers for doing fan dubs on YouTube, despite being a person who did many fan dubs herself. Now, I know the news moves so fast, and sometimes we all feel like we have the memory of Araki himself, but if you need any refresher, I'll have a video from when Nux Taku covered this whole situation in the description. Seeing people like that get roles just highlights the corporatism and nepotism that no series, not even JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, can avoid. And it doesn't sit right with me that she would go out of her way to attack one of my friends. She's a hypocrite, she's annoying on Twitter, and I think she's a demerit to the solid English dub cast. So Netflix, in their mistaken desire to be the first to release Stone Ocean for the most profit as possible, is actively harming the viewer and producer experience just to make a quick buck. And it's worrying to see because I've said multiple times before, I want Stone Ocean to be the best part it can be with this anime adaptation. These issues alone wouldn't be enough to make a video about, but together they just keep taking me out of the experience. And I can't help but wonder how anime-onlys are receiving this experience as well. If you are an anime only, please let me know in the comments below. Now, there's always a chance that some of these things can be fixed, specifically animation errors or low-res CG models when the Blu-ray version is released. Since Netflix only holds the streaming rights, home video distribution is handled between Warner Bros. Entertainment and Viz Media. Given extra time, David Pro has been known to extend bits of animation in certain scenes and also put Giorno's hand down Mista's pants. I would assume something similar is going to take place with Stone Ocean, but the timeline is way out there. At the time of this video going live, we don't even know when the next batch of Stone Ocean episodes is dropping. But this is all very concerning considering Netflix will keep pushing these early deadlines. I hope by drawing attention to these issues, some of them can be resolved for the next batches. And those were my thoughts about Stone Ocean, the anime. I am, of course, looking forward to seeing Anasui actually do something, and we'll get to see if Dragon's Dream is salvageable. I kid. Let me know in the comments if you guys think the same thing. Was there another rushed aspect of this production that I missed? If there was, let me know. Like the video if you want to see more long-form content like this. I honestly didn't think we'd reach 250k by the end of the year, but you guys really pulled through. 2020 has been a rough year for my channel, not because I dislike the content I was making. I actually think I've put out some of my best videos over the past year. If you want to revisit any of them, it would be greatly appreciated. But the algorithm was against me, copyright abuse was against me, and I had to focus on graduating. So I hope you all have a beautiful Duang, a Merry Christmas, thanks for 250,000 subs, and I'll see you all next time.